The city of Baltimore filed a lawsuit against one of the country's largest manufacturers of ghost guns. The suit claims the company, Polymer80, flooded the city with guns and fueled a public health crisis. It also alleges the manufacturer intentionally undermined federal and state laws by providing gun kits without serial numbers to buyers who do not undergo background checks. For more on this, I want to bring in Champe Barton. He is a reporter at The Trace, which is a news organization that covers gun violence in the United States. Thank you so much for being with us. Champ, really, it seems that these ghost guns are out there so that people don't have to undergo background checks and that these weapons just can get on the market very easily.
Yeah, I mean, that basically summarizes it. They're very easy to get, and their purpose does seem, though originally tied to hobbyists and tinkerers who wanted to see how they could manufacture firearms or lower receivers at their homes, they definitely seem to be like a hot commodity among criminals and people who don't want their guns to be traced in the event that they're recovered by police.
Well, and what I found was interesting in reading about the Baltimore situation and this lawsuit against Polymer80 is that really the violent crime numbers have spiked so much and that they're now collecting so many of these guns. Can you tell us more about the specifics of this lawsuit and how it could end up impacting the city?
Certainly. I mean, I think it's important to note that still a vast majority of the guns that are recovered in Baltimore are serialized firearms that are purchased at a federally licensed firearm retailer. And are not ghost guns. That said, the number of ghost guns recovered by police has increased dramatically over the past few years. I think that this technique of suing the manufacturer has not been tried often with gun industry and problems, particularly as it relates to gun violence, because gun manufacturers typically have this immunity under federal law. Because Polymer80 is making many 80% lower receivers, which are technically not considered firearms. There is some discussion about whether or not they should be treated as firearm manufacturers under the law. And so it's questionable as to whether the legal immunity that the gun industry enjoys will apply to Polymer80, which is why you see suits in places like Baltimore and DC trying to hold the manufacturer accountable for the guns that are for the parts, I guess, that wind up being used to create guns used in crimes.
That's really interesting. I didn't realize that specific point. So thank you for that. Maryland's ban on these untraceable weapons also went into effect, it looks like, on Wednesday. How important is it for cities and states? In your opinion, you're doing all the background and research at your organization. How important is it to take action against ghost guns themselves? And what do you think the federal government should do? What have they done?
I mean, it's hard to speculate on what sort of should be done. That's sort of a question for the regulators. But it's certainly the case that this is a very difficult problem to regulate away, insofar as it stands currently, these parts do not have to be serialized, and so they do not have to undergo any sort of federal oversight, I guess you could say. In other countries, different parts of the gun are serialized. So in America, it's just this lower receiver component. Most of these ghost guns, when they're purchased, they are purchased as the lower receiver, which does not have a serial number, and it needs to be modified slightly to accept the upper piece and the barrel. And then the upper piece and the barrel are metal components that are purchased and are factory made and are purchased separately from the gun. In other countries, those metal components are serialized. And so the same sort of ghost gun problem that we see here may not wind up being as prevalent there should these parts proliferate in those parts of the world. But that's not something that the U.S., at least to date, has ever really explored, serializing barrels or serializing upper receivers. And until then, I don't really know what the regulatory route is in terms of regulating the manufactured components themselves, outside of efforts that the ATF has made to sort of like crack down on specific retailers like Polymer80 in the past, which have heretofore been not all entirely successful.
It seems like it's a case of the technology moves so quickly that now the legislation might have to catch up to it.
Definitely. I mean, that's definitely what this is. And these guns, though they are not used proportionally as much in crime as regular run-of-the-mill handguns, they provide this really sort of dangerous advantage to people who want to use guns in crimes, because so much of the data that is used by regulatory agencies like the ATF and by law enforcement to try to crack down on gun trafficking comes from the serial number that they get on the guns that they recover. And if you're recovering guns without serial numbers, these law enforcement officers are essentially at a loss. There's no way to tell which stores are selling disproportionately high numbers of these guns. There's no way to, if the federal government ever were to try to crack down on some of the distributors or manufacturers that sell firearms, to try to get them to stop selling to dealers who sell disproportionately high numbers of guns that wind up in crimes, they wouldn't be able to do that with these guns, because it's very difficult to tell where they were sold originally. So you might have the reason I bring that up is you might have situations where the federally licensed firearm retailer is acting responsibly and selling a gun, and it winds up in a crime. And you can tell based on the number of traces that have been guns that have been traced back to that store store is not frequently selling guns that turn up at crime scenes. There are other retailers that do not act responsibly and are responsible for grossly high numbers of guns that wind up in crimes. And the tracing that the ATF does, which relies on that serial number, is absolutely necessary for them to be able to determine which stores are those problem dealers and which aren't. And without that serial number, it makes it very, very difficult for the ATF or any law enforcement body to figure it out.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, along those lines, you have also been tracking publicly traded gun and ammunition companies. It looks like profits are up. We talked a lot about this during COVID. People were going out, they were buying more guns, they were buying more ammunition. How much are these companies making? And do we still see this drive for people to continue to buy up guns and ammo?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, you hit the nail on the head. The sales surge from 2020 and 2021 is really what drove this surge in profits. And that surging profit margin for these companies is in the ballpark of several $1 billion. These companies do make a fair amount of money every year in most cases. But the 2020 and 2021, or at least you could say sort of since the pandemic, because the calendar years and fiscal years don't always line up perfectly. But since the pandemic, these companies have sort of made more in that sort of 2-year period than they had in any prior 2-year period, it seems. And that is primarily driven by that surge that you saw. That was a result both of unrest around the pandemic, unrest around sort of widespread protests across the country in the aftermath of George Floyd's killing, in the lead up to the election, and then in the aftermath of the insurrection in January. You've had sort of a quadruple whammy of situations that lead people to sort of worry that their institutions are maybe not going to be able to protect them. And so you see a lot of people going to the store to get a gun, primarily for that reason, it seems.
So it's personal protection.
Sure. I mean, this is not 100%. It's partly speculation. There's been some surveys done on the subject, and a lot of first-time buyers have expressed that sort of concern, that they just didn't have that concern up until the past couple of years. But it certainly seems that way. It seems that a lot of people are buying guns because they're afraid that they might need to use it.
All right, Champe Barton, we thank you so much for being with us.